The story of this movie is inspired by a shocking true event that almost became one of the worst railway disasters in American history. Everything begins on May 15, 2001, at a railroad yard in the United States. A veteran engineer named Dewey prepares to move freight train 777. Before leaving the yard, he notices that the track ahead is set the wrong way. Instead of stopping the train completely, he decides to save a few minutes by taking a risky shortcut. He slows the train to a crawl, leaves it rolling on its own, and jumps out of the cab to manually switch the tracks. It's a move that completely breaks safety rules, but Dewey believes he has done it many times before and can easily pull it off again. What he doesn't realize is that one tiny mistake is about to change everything. Before stepping off, he places the throttle in automatic mode, but the control isn't fully locked into position. The moment he leaves the cab, the lever suddenly slips forward and instantly shifts into full power. In seconds, train 777 transforms from a quiet freight train into an unstoppable steel monster. Its speed begins climbing higher and higher. Dewey is still running toward the track switch when the train races past him. Realizing what's happening, he quickly kicks the switch into position, but it's already too late. The runaway train is now charging down the main railway line with no driver inside. Desperate to fix his mistake, Dewey sprints after the speeding locomotive with everything he has. Somehow, he manages to grab one of the side handles. This is his final chance. He struggles to pull himself on board, but his strength gives out. His grip slips, and he crashes onto the tracks while the massive train disappears into the distance. Now the situation is completely out of control. Train 777, pulling 39 loaded freight cars and weighing nearly 13,000 tons, keeps accelerating every second. With no one at the controls, the giant machine tears down the tracks like a runaway beast, powerful enough to destroy almost anything standing in its path. Surprisingly, Dewey still doesn't understand how serious the disaster has become. He rushes to the dispatch office and reports what happened. Trying to stay calm, he tells his supervisor that the train should only be moving at a slow speed because he left it in automatic mode. He has no idea that his single mistake is about to trigger one of the most dangerous runaway train incidents in American history. The dispatcher immediately asks for the train's speed. Dewey guesses it's probably less than 20 kilometers per hour. Since that doesn't sound too dangerous, the supervisor doesn't panic either. He gives Dewey a quick lecture and orders him to grab a vehicle and chase the train. But as they drive farther along the tracks, reality hits hard. No matter how fast they go, they can't even see train 777. The runaway locomotive is accelerating far beyond anything they expected. Only then does everyone realize that this is no ordinary emergency. But the worst news is still waiting. Dispatch suddenly discovers that another train is approaching from the opposite direction. A tourist train carrying 150 school children. Both trains are racing toward each other on the same track. There isn't enough time to stop either train. There isn't enough time to evacuate the passengers. If nothing changes in the next few moments, a catastrophic head-on collision is inevitable. The entire dispatch center erupts into panic. Without wasting another second, the supervisor radios the passenger train and urgently orders the engineer to switch tracks immediately. Seconds later, the runaway train bursts into view at more than 100 kilometers per hour. The distance between both trains disappears almost instantly. Everything now depends on a single decision. At the very last moment, the experienced passenger train engineer reacts with incredible precision. He pushes the locomotive to full power and successfully guides his train onto a different track. Only seconds later, the two trains thunder past each other with almost no space between them. Disaster is avoided by the smallest possible margin. Inside the tourist train, the children cheer and wave excitedly as train 777 roars past at full speed. To them, it's nothing more than an exciting sight. They never realize that the train they are happily watching was only seconds away from turning into the deadliest moment of their lives. Within hours, the runaway train becomes the biggest story across Ohio. Every major news channel interrupts its regular programming with breaking news. Helicopters fill the sky. Cameras begin following the speeding locomotive, and millions of people watch the terrifying situation unfold live. As the crisis grows, the railway company's top executives rush into an emergency meeting. The dispatch team suggests the fastest solution: simply derail train 777 before it reaches a crowded area. But management rejects the idea immediately. This isn't an ordinary freight train. It is carrying extremely dangerous cargo. Inside its freight cars are nearly 200 tons of diesel fuel, 120 tons of highly explosive material, and several cars loaded with toxic chemicals. If the train derails at this speed, the explosion could be enormous. Even worse, if those toxic chemicals leak into into nearby towns, rivers, and farmland, the disaster could spread far beyond the railway tracks. Now, this is no longer just a runaway train. It's a moving environmental catastrophe. The company knows the consequences would be devastating. Along with countless lives being put at risk, the financial damage could exceed $100 million, and the company's reputation could collapse overnight. They have only one option left: stop the train without causing it to crash. An emergency rescue plan is created within minutes. The idea is incredibly risky. A second locomotive will be sent onto the same track ahead of train 777. By allowing the runaway train to crash into it from behind, they hope the impact will gradually reduce its speed. It's an operation where even a small mistake could cost lives. The dangerous mission is assigned to veteran engineer Frank Barnes. Frank understands exactly what he's walking into. He knows there's a real chance he won't come back alive. Even so, without hesitation, he accepts the mission. Soon, the two locomotives make contact. The first impact shakes both trains violently, then another, and another. Each collision sends a powerful shock through the runaway train. Slowly, the impossible begins to happen. The speed of train 777, which had been racing at well over 100 kilometers per hour, finally drops into the 60 kilometer per hour range. It's a huge improvement, but the danger is far from over. Now the rescue team launches the second phase of the operation. A helicopter flies directly above the moving train. An experienced railroad operator is carefully lowered onto the runaway locomotive, hoping to climb inside the cab and finally regain control. For a brief moment, it looks like the mission might actually succeed. The operator reaches the engine and steps into the cab, but at that exact second, another violent impact slams the two locomotives together. The force of the collision is overwhelming. The operator is thrown completely out of the cab. He crashes onto the ground beside the tracks and loses consciousness instantly. Just like that, the entire mission falls apart. Most people would give up after a failure like this, but not Frank Barnes. As he keeps chasing the runaway train, he spots a maintenance siding further ahead. A dangerous new idea flashes through his mind. Using every bit of experience he has gained over decades on the railroad, Frank decides to make one final gamble. His plan is to pull train 777 off the main track and guide it onto a side siding where it can no longer threaten other trains. It sounds possible, but reality is far more brutal. Even after slowing down, the runaway train is still unbelievably heavy. Its enormous weight overpowers Frank's small locomotive. Instead of pulling the giant freight train off the main line, Frank loses control of his own engine. Within seconds, his locomotive overturns, ending the mission in disaster, while train 777 continues racing forward with no one able to stop it. The rescue mission ends in tragedy. The veteran railroad worker, who is only 2 months away from retirement, Judd Stewart, sacrifices his life while trying to stop the runaway train. At the same time, train 777 breaks free once again. Within minutes, it gains speed and races past 100 kilometers per hour, turning back into an unstoppable steel monster. Everything the rescue teams had achieved is wiped out. The operation has completely failed. One man is dead, another is critically injured. With lives already lost, the railway company refuses to approve any more dangerous rescue attempts. Instead, management finally agrees to the plan they had rejected from the very beginning. The runaway train will be derailed. Police officers rush to a small town farther down the tracks and begin installing a derailment device. Nearby neighborhoods are evacuated as quickly as possible. Emergency crews flood the area. News helicopters continue broadcasting every terrifying second live. Then, another alarming update arrives. Officers monitoring the train calculate its speed at nearly 70 miles per hour, around 120 kilometers per hour. Now everything is ready. Within minutes, train 777 will reach the derailment point. Either the nightmare will finally end, or the country will witness one of the worst railway disasters in history. But before the runaway train reaches that location, another life-threatening situation unfolds. An empty freight train is approaching from the opposite direction. Only 2 railroad workers are on board: veteran engineer Frank Barnes and his young partner, Will Coulson, who is working his very first day on the railroad. As soon as they receive the emergency warning, they realize the runaway train is less than 10 kilometers away. There is almost no time left. Fortunately, a siding track appears just ahead. Frank immediately pushes the locomotive harder, racing toward it with every second counting. Moments later, the siding comes into view, but there is no room for error. In the distance, train 777 is already charging toward them at full speed. Without hesitating, Frank steers their locomotive onto the side track just in time. The engine survives, but the freight train behind them is too long. The final rail car doesn't clear the switch. Seconds later, train 777 slams into it with tremendous force. The last car is completely destroyed. After the violent impact, silence briefly fills the air. Frank looks behind him and sees the shattered remains of the rail car. Then an idea suddenly strikes him, a dangerous idea, but perhaps the only chance left. He realizes their locomotive's air brake system is still working. Without wasting another second, Frank turns to Will. They quickly uncouple every freight car, leaving only their locomotive behind. His plan is bold. They will chase train 777, catch up from behind, connect their engine to the runaway train, and use their own locomotive like a giant anchor to slow it down. It's an incredibly dangerous strategy. When company executives hear about the plan, they reject it immediately. According to them, a derailment system has already been prepared ahead. There is no reason to take another unnecessary risk, but Frank refuses to stand down. Looking straight ahead, he says with complete determination, if that derailment fails by even a fraction, an entire town could disappear. We have to stop this train before it gets there. This is where the story reaches its most intense and dangerous chapter. Frank already knows the truth. At this speed, and with a train this heavy, the derailment device has almost no chance of stopping it. This is no longer about proving courage. It's about preventing a catastrophe. If train 777 derails near the next city, where millions of people live, the explosion and toxic chemicals could destroy everything in their path. Before Frank can even finish explaining the danger, train 777 reaches the derailment point, and exactly what he feared happens. The derailment device barely slows the train. It blasts straight through without stopping. Now, everyone understands one thing. The only hope left is Frank Barnes and Will Coulson. With only a single locomotive, they race after the runaway train one final time. Frank quickly closes the gap. Now comes the hardest part of the entire mission. They must connect their engine to the back of train 777, while both trains are moving at high speed. Frank carefully controls the locomotive while Will guides him from the rear. Their first attempt ends in failure. The impact destroys the last freight car, sending rocks and debris flying everywhere. Dust fills the air, making it difficult to even breathe. Still, neither of them gives up. They try again. This time, the coupling finally connects. For a brief moment, it feels like victory. But then Will notices a terrifying problem. The coupling hasn't locked completely. One strong jolt could separate both trains all over again. Without thinking about his own safety, Will crawls toward the moving connection. With ballast stones flying beneath him, he kicks the locking mechanism with all his strength. Finally, the lock snaps into place, but in the same instant, his foot becomes trapped inside the coupling. The sudden pain throws him off balance. He slips over the side of the moving train. For one terrifying moment, he disappears. Inside the control center, his wife watches in horror. Everyone believes he's gone. Then, seconds later, a miracle happens. Will has managed to grab a handrail. Slowly, injured and limping, he climbs back into view. His wife bursts into tears, overwhelmed with relief. But the nightmare isn't over. The train is still racing at nearly 120 kilometers per hour, and less than 10 kilometers remain before it reaches the city. Even worse, the entrance to the city contains a sharp curve. Any train entering that turn faster than 40 kilometers per hour will almost certainly derail. Directly below that curve sit massive fuel storage tanks. If train 777 crashes there, the explosion would be beyond imagination. Frank doesn't hesitate. Using every bit of power his locomotive has, he pulls against the runaway train like two giants locked in a tug of war. The wheels spin violently. Bright sparks explode beneath the engine. But one locomotive simply isn't strong enough to stop 39 loaded freight cars. Then Will comes up with one final idea. If the manual brakes on every freight car are activated one by one, they might finally slow the train enough. Will is badly injured. That leaves only Frank. Without a second thought, Frank climbs onto the moving train. One car after another, he manually activates the brakes, then another and another. With every brake, the train loses a little more speed. Minute after minute, the impossible slowly becomes possible. The speed finally begins to fall, but it still isn't low enough for the deadly curve ahead. Now the train reaches the turn. Everyone watches in complete silence. The massive train leans dangerously to one side. For a few terrifying seconds, it looks ready to roll over, but somehow It survives the curve. A wave of relief spreads across the control room. Maybe the nightmare is finally ending. Then disaster threatens once again. After working non-stop under extreme pressure, the braking system overheats. The brake discs fail. The brakes stop working. And train 777 begins accelerating once more. Frank immediately runs toward the lead locomotive. If someone can reach the engineer's cab, the runaway train can finally be stopped. Halfway there, he faces another obstacle. The gap between the rail cars is now too wide to cross. One wrong jump would mean certain death. Just then, a pickup truck appears, racing alongside the train. Frank sees one final opportunity. He shouts for Will to jump, without hesitating. Will leaps from the moving train and lands safely in the truck. Now comes the final gamble. The pickup races alongside the locomotive. Will gathers every ounce of courage he has left. He waits for the perfect moment, then jumps. Everything happens in only a few seconds. After more than 2 terrifying hours of racing across the railway with no one in control, train 797 finally comes to a complete stop. The disaster that could have destroyed an entire city is prevented at the very last moment, and here the movie ends. Make sure to subscribe and turn on notifications so you can watch more videos like this.